What if the sky above your head has never been what you thought it was? What if the glowing moon that you see almost every night, the same one that has inspired lullabies, love songs, and poetry for thousands of years, was not a natural satellite at all? What if it was a machine? What if the planet Saturn, with its breathtaking rings admired in every astronomy textbook, was not a distant marvel, but the architect of your cage? And what if the ancient serpent, the symbol that winds its way through every culture, every religion, every myth, was not your liberator, but the very current that keeps you spinning inside the prison? For most of your life, you have trusted the sky. You have been told that the heavens are beautiful, mysterious, but ultimately natural. The moon shines with borrowed light. The planets orbit in predictable patterns. The stars are distant suns. This is the comfort of science, that the sky is stable, mechanical, rational. But imagine, just for a moment, that all of this is not true.
Imagine that the sky itself is a mask, a stage set built to keep you looking up in awe while never seeing the machinery behind it. The moon we think we know. Let us start with the moon. For Americans, the moon is a symbol of triumph. It is tied to one of the proudest chapters in our history, the Apollo missions. In July of 1969, nearly every household in America gathered around their television sets, their living rooms glowing with black and white light as Neil Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface. His words became immortal. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. That moment was more than science. It was theater. It was myth. It was America announcing itself to the world as the pioneer of the cosmos. The moon became proof that we could go anywhere, do anything, achieve the impossible. But hidden within the data collected by those missions is something that gnaws at the edges of the official story.
During Apollo 12, NASA deliberately crashed a lunar module into the moon's surface. The seismometers that had been placed there recorded a shocking result. The moon rang like a bell for almost an hour. Hollow objects ring. Solid ones do not. NASA scientists themselves admitted they were baffled. And it wasn't just once. Later impacts produced similar results. Again and again, the moon reverberated as if it were an empty shell. Even today, decades later, no conventional explanation fully satisfies this anomaly. And yet, the question lingers in the background, unanswered. Is the moon truly what we think it is? Or is it something else entirely? Too perfect to be random. Consider the moon's orbit. It is the only satellite in the solar system that produces perfect solar eclipses. The size and distance line up so precisely that the moon covers the sun's disk exactly, leaving a ring of fire in the sky. To scientists, this is a coincidence. To engineers, it looks like design. The odds of such perfection occurring naturally are astronomically low. Yet here it is, shaping our calendars, our myths, our very sense of time. Think of what that means. Every culture on Earth has been shaped by an object whose geometry screams intention. Is it an accident, or is it a message? Ancient whispers. The idea that the moon is artificial is not new. It surfaces in whispers across ancient cultures. The Zulu shamans of South Africa tell of two trickster gods, Wawane and Mpanku, who rolled the moon into the sky long ago. They described it as a hollowed-out shell placed there to keep watch over humanity. The Greek historian Aristotle recorded that certain tribes remembered a time before the moon, an age when Earth was lit only by the sun and the stars. And in American indigenous traditions, the moon was not always benevolent. Some nations revered it as a grandmother spirit, but others feared it as a manipulator of cycles, a thief of memory. Modern education dismisses these accounts as myths, metaphors, stories told by primitive people. But what if they were not stories? What if they were fragments of truth, encoded in legend because the truth was too dangerous to speak openly? The moon's grip on life. Look closely, and you will see that the moon's influence is not poetic, but biological. Women's reproductive cycles mirror the moon's 28 days. Ocean tides rise and fall in rhythm with its pull. Even our emotions and sleep patterns shift subtly with its phases. Is this mere coincidence, or is it programming? In Hinduism, the moon was tied to Soma, the sacred drink of immortality, but also forgetfulness, washing souls clean of memory before rebirth. In Tibetan mysticism, the moon lit the path of the soul through the bardo, the shadowy realm between lives. In Islamic esotericism, the moon was described as a mirror reflecting frequencies that shape human behavior. Again and again, traditions hint at the same dark secret. The moon does not free you, it recycles you. It ensures that every birth, every death, every dream of transcendence is folded back into the same loop. The cycle of entrapment. Consider the phases of the moon as a program. The new moon awakens longing. The waxing moon builds anticipation. The full moon offers the illusion of fulfillment. The waning moon sows dissatisfaction, resetting the cycle. Desire, fulfillment, disappointment, rebirth. The wheel turns again. This is not accidental. This is design. The moon's light is borrowed, not its own. It shines like a mirror, reflecting the sun's fire as cold silver. That reflected light hypnotizes, entrains, synchronizes. It keeps consciousness tuned to cycles. It ensures that souls never escape the wheel. Worship as consent. Here lies the cruelest part. Worship of the moon is not innocent. It is consent. Every prayer whispered beneath its glow, every ritual timed to its phases, every festival celebrated according to its calendar, all feed the machine, all renew the contract. Think of how deeply this runs in America. Easter, the celebration of resurrection, is calculated by the moon. Ramadan, one of the most sacred observances in Islam, follows the lunar calendar. Pagan festivals like Halloween and Beltane trace their timing to lunar rhythms.
Even in modern secular life, we speak of harvest moons and honeymoons. The moon is everywhere. But behind every celebration lies a hidden truth. You are feeding the very system that ensures you will never escape. The romance of chains. Americans love the moon. We call it romantic. We write songs about moonlight, from Blue Moon to Fly Me to the Moon. Hollywood paints it as the backdrop of love stories. Lovers walk on beaches beneath its glow, never realizing that the silver light they find so enchanting may be the very chain that binds them. Every time you gaze up at it with awe, you reinforce the contract. Every time you celebrate under its phases, you participate in the ritual. It does not matter whether you believe in its power or laugh at it.
Belief is irrelevant. What matters is attention, energy. And attention is energy. The forgotten age. But what if there was a time before the moon? Aristotle's tribes remembered it. Zulu shamans told of it. Other myths echo the same memory. Imagine Earth lit only by the sun and stars. Imagine nights filled with true darkness, unmarred by the cold silver glow. Imagine a humanity not synchronized to cycles of longing and forgetting, but living in a different rhythm altogether. Was this the age of freedom? Did the arrival of the moon mark the beginning of captivity? A machine in the sky. Modern conspiracy theorists whisper that the moon is not only hollow, but inhabited. Some claim it is a vast control station monitoring Earth. Others suggest it is an ancient ark placed in orbit as part of a cosmic experiment. What we know for certain is that the moon's orbit, size, and behavior are unlike any other satellite in the solar system. Too precise, too stable, too perfect. Engineering, not accident. If the moon is indeed a machine, then what is its function? The answer is chilling. It is a recycling station. When you die, your consciousness is drawn into its field. Your memories are stripped. Your identity is erased, and you are sent back, reborn, ready to repeat the cycle. Your past lives are not a staircase toward enlightenment. They are laps around a wheel, powered by lunar gravity and lunar light. You think you are ascending. You are not. You are circling. It is a glitch in the program. A moment where the recycling process falters and you glimpse the path you have walked countless times before. Think of it, the strangest experiences of your life, déjà vu, recurring dreams, the sense that you were meant to meet someone or be somewhere, may not be destiny. They may be evidence of the loop. They may be proof that you are a prisoner running the same track again and again. The sky is a stage. The moon is not the only actor. It is only the beginning. If the moon is the recycler, then Saturn is the warden. Its rings, so beautiful through a telescope, are not decoration, but bars. Its hexagonal storm is not weather, but geometry. And if Saturn is the warden, then the serpent is the current, the hunger, the motion, the whisper that keeps you moving so the system never runs out of fuel. Together, they form the architecture of the prison. Together they ensure that no soul ever truly escapes. The moon is not what you think it is. It is not a lantern of romance. It is not a passive companion circling our world. It is the first lock in a prison too vast to see. And the moment you begin to recognize it, the moment you allow yourself to ask if the familiar is really the deceiver, you begin the journey toward awakening. But to truly understand the prison, you must meet its warden. You must face Saturn, the keeper of time, the devourer of freedom, the architect of the cube. And once you see Saturn for what it is, you will never look at a clock, a calendar, or even your own life the same way again. The shadow of the clock. If the moon is the recycler of souls, then Saturn is the warden of the prison. The moon may strip away memory and send you back, but Saturn ensures there is always a cell to return to. From the first tick of a clock to the last beat of your heart, Saturn governs boundaries. It is the whisper in every calendar, the weight in every deadline, the grim reminder that time is running out. Americans know this voice well. It echoes in phrases we repeat every day. Time is money. The clock is ticking. Don't waste time. We wear watches, set alarms, and measure our worth by productivity. We celebrate birthdays with candles marking another year gone. We fear wrinkles, gray hairs, retirement, and death. But what if all of this is not natural? What if time itself is the true prison and Saturn is the architect? Kronos, the devourer. To the ancient Greeks, Saturn was Kronos, the god of time, who devoured his own children. It is one of the most chilling images in mythology. A father consuming the very offspring he created. This is not metaphor. This is blueprint. Time devours all things. Whatever is born, grows, loves, or creates, Saturn consumes. Every empire falls. Every star burns out. Every life ends. Kronos does not rest. For the Romans, Saturn was the god of harvest, of sowing and reaping. But what is harvest if not consumption? Crops sprout, grow, are cut down, consumed. Again and again, Saturn's sickle was not just for wheat, it was for existence itself. And yet, Saturn was worshipped. Saturnalia, the great Roman festival, celebrated his reign. Slaves were temporarily freed, roles reversed, chaos permitted, but only for a season. Afterward, the order of control returned stronger than before. The illusion of freedom was part of the system. Saturn in the sky. Look at Saturn through a telescope. You will see one of the most beautiful sights in the cosmos. Luminous rings floating like a halo, circling the planet in perfect symmetry. But beauty can be deceptive. To modern science, these rings are frozen fragments of ice and dust. To the initiates of old, they were the bars of a cosmic cage. They encircle Saturn not as decoration, but as architecture. Even more mysterious is the storm at Saturn's North Pole, a massive hexagon, perfectly geometric, spinning for centuries without change. Weather should be chaotic, swirling, unstable. But here, on the crown of Saturn, is a locked pattern, a six-sided geometry that has no natural explanation. The hexagon is not chaos, it is order. It is design. Each side corresponds to the six faces of the cube, and the cube is Saturn's signature. The cube of Saturn appears everywhere in human civilization, in sacred temples, in corporate towers, in the screens we stare at every day. In Mecca, millions of Muslims circle the Kaaba, a black cube at the heart of their holiest site. In Judaism, the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple was a perfect cube.
In Christianity, the New Jerusalem described in Revelation is shaped as a cube descending from heaven. Why this shape? Why this geometry? Because the cube is Saturn's architecture. It is the three-dimensional manifestation of the hexagon storm. It is the geometry of confinement. Every edge, every corner, every face is a boundary. Inside the cube, everything is contained, measured, limited. And so, humanity bows to cubes, often without realizing it. We work in cubicles. We live in box-shaped houses. We place our attention into glowing rectangular screens. Our very consciousness is processed within Saturn's geometry. Time as prison. Saturn's greatest invention is time. Imagine existence without it. No clocks, no calendars, no birthdays, no aging, just pure being, infinite and timeless. Now look at your life. You are born, you grow, you age, you die. Every moment is a countdown. Every second slips away, never to return. This is not nature. This is programming. Saturn ensures that consciousness is bound to a linear sequence, a story that always ends in death. In Kabbalistic mysticism, Saturn is linked to Bina, the sephira of understanding and form. It is where infinity is given limits. Boundlessness accepts boundaries. Light becomes structure. But some teachings suggest that this structuring is not natural, but imposed. That Saturn is not a filter of creation, but an artificial governor, a limiter placed on infinite consciousness. The rings of Saturn are not debris. They are a containment field. They broadcast frequencies of limitation, ensuring that no being expands too far, too fast. And so every life feels like a race against time. Every joy is shadowed by loss. Every achievement is consumed by age. Time devours all. Chronos never stops eating. The accountant of suffering. Every action you take, every choice you make carries a weight. Call it karma, cause and effect, or simply debt. Saturn ensures that this weight is carried into the next cycle, that no soul escapes without paying the balance. But this is not divine justice. It is bookkeeping, a cosmic ledger of suffering. Every pleasure must be repaid with pain. Every freedom must be balanced with chains. Every birth must be matched with death. Even your attempts to escape the system are accounted for. Saturn ensures that rebellion creates consequences, that awakening is taxed with suffering, that no energy slips through the cracks. This is why Saturn is always associated with hardship, discipline, sacrifice. It is not a teacher, it is an auditor. Its lessons are not about liberation, they are about compliance. The cube in America. You may think this is abstract, distant, ancient, but look around you in America today. You live inside Saturn's architecture. You work in rectangular buildings. You stare at screens shaped as cubes and rectangles. Your phone, your television, your computer monitor, all faces of the cube. Corporate logos hide Saturn's symbols. Rings, cubes, hexagons. Banks, governments, tech giants, all replicate the geometry of limitation. Not because of coincidence, but because those who understand the system replicate its symbols of power. Think of Wall Street. The skyscrapers are vertical cubes. The stock exchange is driven by time, calendars, quarters, deadlines. Money itself is Saturnian, a system of debt and credit, balance and penalty. Think of your daily life. You wake by an alarm clock. You work by the hour. You are paid by the hour. You eat at lunch hour. You drive in rush hour. You live by the calendar. You die by the years. This is not freedom. This is containment, the whisper of necessity. And yet, Saturn convinces you that this is necessary. Without form, there is no world. Without boundaries, there is no self. Without time, there is no story. It whispers that suffering builds character, that aging gives meaning, that death is natural. But these are rationalizations. They are not truths. They are excuses. The kind a jailer gives to prisoners so they stop dreaming of escape. Saturn's wisdom is cruel. It does not liberate. It conditions. It shapes you to accept boundaries, to fear the infinite, to cling to structure. Its initiation is not awakening, but surrender. And so humanity bows unknowingly. We mark time with calendars. We fear the scythe of death. We labor under systems of law and order. We call it reality, but it is Saturn's cage, the weight of routine. When you feel trapped in routine, when you feel the grind of work, when you sense the weight of aging pressing on your shoulders, you are not imagining it. You are hearing the hum of Saturn's prison. Every deadline you dread. Every hour spent in labor. These are the bars of Saturn's cage pressing against your soul. And when you gaze through a telescope and admire Saturn's beauty, remember this: you are not looking at a distant planet.
You are staring at the locks of your prison, shining in cosmic light. Saturn's hidden hand in religion. Religions across the world encode Saturn's geometry. In Islam, pilgrims circle the Kaaba, a black cube. In Judaism, worshippers place tefillin, small black cubes, upon their foreheads and arms. In Christianity, the cross itself echoes the cube unfolded, its 6 sides laid flat. Are these sacred to God or to Saturn? Why would holy spaces take the shape of the cube unless they were designed as frequency chambers, reinforcing the architecture of the prison with human ritual energy? Why would billions bow, circle, chant, and pray in patterns that replicate Saturn's geometry, unless it fed the very system that keeps them bound? Even rebellion does not free you. Even when you reject religion, you still bow to Saturn's time. You still age. You still suffer. You still die. The cube surrounds you whether you believe or not. The Saturnian spell in modern life. Look closer. Modern America is saturated with Saturn's spell. Our entertainment industry sells endless stories of clocks, deadlines, countdowns. Our sports are divided into quarters, halves, innings, measured slices of time. Even our superheroes wear Saturnian symbols, rings, cubes, hexagons hidden in plain sight. Even medicine itself bows to Saturn. The caduceus, symbol of healing, is entwined with serpents, Saturn's partners in the prison system. Commerce runs on contracts, penalties, debts, and balances, all echoes of Saturn's accounting. And yet, who asked for this? Who created this system? Was time truly born with the cosmos, or was it imposed as a mechanism of control? The illusion of progress. Saturn also hides in the illusion of progress. We celebrate milestones, graduation, promotions, anniversaries. We measure ourselves by decades. We tell ourselves we are moving forward, but forward to where? Every step of progress is still a step inside the cube. Every milestone is just another corner turned in the same cage. You are not climbing out. You are circling in. This is why life feels repetitive. This is why societies rise and fall in predictable patterns. This is why history repeats itself. Saturn ensures the loop continues. The warden never leaves the tower. Saturn and the American dream. Nowhere is Saturn's prison more visible than in the American dream itself. You are born, you go to school, you graduate, you get a job, you work 40 years, you retire, you die. The entire dream is measured by clocks, calendars, paychecks, retirement accounts. Even freedom is scheduled. Vacations are allotted by days off. Weekends are the 2 corners of a cube. Holidays are mapped on calendars. Life is not lived, it is managed. And when it ends, Saturn smiles.
Another soul devoured, another cycle complete. The warden of time. So let us strip away the mask. Saturn is not just a planet. Saturn is the warden of time. Saturn is the architect of limitation. Saturn is the cube that surrounds your consciousness. The moon recycles souls. Saturn ensures there is always a cell to return to. Together, they form the first half of the prison system. But the prison needs power. It needs energy. It needs movement. That is where the serpent comes in. The serpent is the current that keeps the gears turning. It is desire, fear, ambition, hunger. It is the whisper that drives you forward, ensuring you never stop generating the energy the system feeds on. And once you see the serpent for what it is, you will understand why every myth, every religion, every culture depicts it at the heart of human destiny. The pulse beneath the garden. If the moon is the recycler of souls and Saturn is the warden of time, then the serpent is the current that keeps the entire prison alive. Without the serpent, the gears would grind to a halt. Without its whisper, there would be no motion, no hunger, no seeking. The moon might recycle, Saturn might contain, but the serpent ensures that the system never runs out of fuel. The serpent is not simply an animal symbol. It is a current of energy, desire, fear, reproduction, ambition, the pulse that keeps humanity running on the treadmill of existence. And in America, the serpent is everywhere. It winds through our scriptures, our politics, our medicine, our entertainment. It hides in plain sight, celebrated as wisdom, demonized as temptation, commercialized as a logo. This is the serpent in America's garden. The serpent of Eden. The most familiar serpent in Western culture is the one that slithered into Eden. For generations of Americans raised in the Judeo-Christian tradition, the serpent is the villain of the very first story. It tempts Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge. Humanity falls. Paradise is lost. Suffering begins. In Sunday schools across the country, this story has been told and retold. The serpent is the tempter, the deceiver, the trickster who introduced sin into the world. But what if the serpent's role was not accident? What if it was function? Notice the pattern. The serpent offers wisdom, the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. Humanity accepts. The result is not liberation, but exile, toil, pain, and death. The cycle begins. The serpent was not offering freedom. It was initiating the wheel. It was ensuring that humanity would move, seek, strive, suffer, generating energy that the prison requires. Double-edged symbol. Across cultures, the serpent is always double-edged. It is wisdom, but also poison. Healing, but also death. Progress, but also repetition.
In Hinduism, the Kundalini serpent coils at the base of the spine, promising spiritual awakening as it rises through the chakras. But even here, the serpent does not truly liberate. Each chakra is another station within Saturn's cube. The rising feels like transcendence, but it is only adaptation. The serpent teaches you to fit more perfectly into the prison. In Norse mythology, Jormungandr, the world serpent, encircles Midgard, tail in mouth. It is not simply a monster, it is the ring of limitation itself. No one leaves the circle. In Mesoamerican myth, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, is a bringer of knowledge. But that knowledge binds as much as it frees. It structures civilizations, creates law, enforces order. It teaches humanity, but only within the boundaries of the cube. Again and again, the serpent appears not as savior, but as system, not as enemy, but as engineer. Benjamin Franklin's famous political cartoon, Join or Die, depicts the American colonies as a severed serpent, unity or death. The serpent became a rallying cry of revolution, not as deceiver, but as symbol of vigilance and power. On the Gadsden flag, the rattlesnake coils with the warning, "Don't tread on me." To many Americans, it represents liberty, independence, defiance. Yet look closer. Even here, the serpent embodies duality, freedom defended by threat of venom, life maintained by readiness to kill, progress fueled by fear. The serpent became a national archetype, not just in politics, but in medicine, commerce, and entertainment. It hides in sight, slithering through every sector of American culture. Medicine's serpent. Walk into any American hospital and you will see it. The caduceus, a staff entwined with two serpents crowned with wings. We are told it is a symbol of healing, yet its origin is far older and far stranger. In Greek myth, the caduceus belonged to Hermes, god of commerce and trickery. It was not a medical symbol at all. The true symbol of healing was the rod of Asclepius, one staff, one serpent. Why then does American medicine carry the emblem of two serpents, the trickster's emblem, instead of the healer's? Was this confusion or revelation? Consider what the serpent truly represents. Cycles of desire, death, rebirth. Medicine too cycles endlessly. Symptoms treated but rarely cured. Patients surviving but rarely free. The serpent does not heal to liberate. It heals to sustain the system, to ensure the cycle continues. In America, the medical industry is vast, powerful, and profitable. But beneath the wings of Hermes and the coils of the serpent, one must ask, is this system healing or feeding the prison? The serpent of desire. The serpent's true power is desire. In America, desire is the engine of everything. Advertising whispers promises. Hollywood projects fantasies. Social media coils around your attention, feeding on your hunger for likes, followers, validation. You are told you need more. A bigger house, a newer car, a better body, a higher status.
The serpent hisses, seek, strive, hunger, and you obey. Even spirituality is marketed. Yoga mats, meditation apps, crystal shops, self-help books promising enlightenment in 7 steps. The serpent wraps itself around your search for freedom and turns it into commerce. Desire fuels capitalism. Desire fuels politics. Desire fuels religion. Without the serpent's whisper, the American machine would collapse. But with it, the treadmill never stops. The Ouroboros of progress. The serpent devours its own tail. This image, the Ouroboros, appears everywhere, in alchemy, in Gnosticism, in tattoos inked on American skin. We are told it means eternity, wholeness, the cycle of life. But what if it is not a symbol of wisdom at all, but a warning? The Ouroboros reveals the mechanism of recycling. Consciousness feeds on itself, consuming desire after desire, life after life, only to begin again. Progress is an illusion. Success, failure, love, loss, all new colors painted on the same wheel. Americans celebrate progress.
Every generation is told they are climbing higher, but the serpent ensures the climb is circular. Each decade feels new, but repeats the same patterns. Wars fought for new reasons, but with the same consequences. Movements rise and fall, promising change, but delivering loops. You are not moving forward, you are circling. The Ouroboros smiles. The serpent and sex. Desire is most potent in reproduction. The moon governs fertility, but the serpent drives it. Sexual energy, craving, intimacy, all are serpentine forces. They ensure bodies are born, new lives are lived, new cycles begin. Without the serpent, the prison would starve. With it, the conveyor belt never runs out of passengers. In American culture, sexuality is both repressed and exploited. It is policed in law, yet plastered across billboards. It is moralized in churches, yet commodified in entertainment. This double bind is not contradiction, it is design. The serpent thrives in duality, ensuring energy flows whether through indulgence or repression. Think of how much of American culture revolves around sex. Advertising, music, film, politics. Think of scandals that topple leaders, industries built on desire, technologies created for it. The serpent is not hiding, it is celebrated. The serpent in logos and entertainment. Look around. The serpent is everywhere in American logos. Pharmaceutical companies, energy corporations, luxury brands. It coils subtly, hidden in curves and lines. Entertainment celebrates it openly. From dragons in fantasy films to snake-like villains in comic books, the serpent is always present. sometimes feared, sometimes admired, but always central. Why? Because the serpent is the archetype of the system. To tell stories without it is to risk remembering a world without the prison. To keep the serpent in your imagination is to keep the current alive. Fear of the void. In Norse myth, when Ragnarok comes, Jormungandr releases its tail and the world ends in fire. In Christian eschatology, the serpent is cast into the pit at the end of days.
Again and again, myths warn that if the serpent cycle ends, so does the world. And so humanity clings to the serpent. Better the familiar wheel of life than the silence of nothingness. Better striving, desiring, suffering than the unknown void beyond. This fear keeps the prison running. We fear liberation more than captivity. America's Garden. And so we return to America's Garden. In Eden, the serpent offered knowledge, and humanity began to toil. In modern America, the serpent offers liberty, prosperity, enlightenment, and we toil still. We seek endlessly money, power, sex, wisdom, transcendence, and the wheel turns. The rattlesnake on the flag, the serpent in the hospital logo. The snake tattoos on youthful skin, the dragons in our movies, the Kundalini in our yoga classes. The serpent never leaves the garden, it defines it. And every time you seek, every time you hunger, strive, rebel, or even awaken, the serpent coils tighter, smiling as the wheel spins once again. The serpent is not myth, it is machinery. It is not legend, it is current. It is the pulse beneath American life, the whisper in every advertisement, the energy in every desire. Without the serpent, the moon and Saturn would collapse. With it, the system thrives. You are not climbing a ladder. You are running on a treadmill, powered by serpentine coils. And as long as you mistake the wheel for progress, you will never leave the garden. The architecture revealed. We have followed three forces separately. The moon, which recycles souls. Saturn, which enforces boundaries and time, and the serpent, which provides the energy of desire and motion. But alone, they are only pieces. Together, they reveal something far more terrifying. Not myth, not religion, but machinery. The ancients hinted at this. The Gnostics spoke of the demiurge, a false god who built the prison of matter, served by archons who manipulate souls. In Hindu cosmology, the wheel of samsara spins endlessly. Birth, death, rebirth, driven by desire, governed by karma, bound by time. Different names, same system. A machine designed to hold you in place. The cosmic factory. Picture it as a factory. The moon is the conveyor belt. Souls enter, stripped of memory, processed and sent back to Earth to repeat the cycle. Saturn is the supervisor, watching from the tower, ensuring the belts never stop, that time keeps the system orderly.
And the serpent is the electricity that powers the belts, the current of desire and seeking that keeps humanity generating energy.
Without one, the others collapse. Without desire, no rebirth. Without time, no measurement. Without recitling, no continuation. But together, they form the perfect prison. The illusion of diversity. This is why these symbols appear across every religion. In Islam, pilgrims circle the Kaaba, the cube of Saturn, guided by the lunar calendar. In Christianity, the cross dominates, the unfolded cube, while the serpent appears as tempter and redeemer. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the serpent energy rises through chakras, but always returns to rebirth, governed by lunar rhythms. In Judaism, the tefillin, small black cubes, are bound to forehead and arm, symbols of devotion, but also geometry of containment. Different rituals, different gods, different texts, but all circling the same machine. Religions appear as paths to liberation, but in truth, they are user interfaces, different operating systems of the same prison, each guiding humanity to worship the cube, the cross, the serpent, the moon, Saturn, each feeding the machine. Worship as energy harvest. The system thrives not on belief, but on energy. Every prayer whispered, every ritual performed, every festival celebrated, every rebellion shouted. All generate energy, and all of it feeds back into the machine. The cruelest truth is this: even resistance powers the system. Reject religion, you still age by Saturn's clock. Mock the moon, you still sleep by its rhythm. Ignore the serpent, you still hunger, strive, desire. The system is airtight. Every move strengthens it. The machinery in America. Nowhere is this more visible than in America. Look at your daily life. You wake by alarm, Saturn's call. You work in cubicles, stare into glowing cubes. You measure your day in hours, your life in decades. You feel your moods rise and fall with the moon. You are driven by advertising, ambition, hunger, the serpent's coil. You are synchronized, not free. The system has absorbed you more completely than ever before. Our architecture is Saturnian, skyscrapers as cubes, neighborhoods as grids, cities laid out in rectangles. Our culture is lunar, calendars, holidays, elections even, tied to cycles. Our economy is serpentine, endless craving, consumption, motion. This is not conspiracy, it is design. The machinery has scaled into modern life, hiding in plain sight. The cube, the cross, and the serpent. Three ancient symbols shape every belief system humanity has ever known. The cube, the cross, the serpent. The cross is the cube unfolded, the symbol of suffering and duality. The serpent is the current of motion, coiling through both. Look around America. The cube is everywhere, in screens, in architecture, in ritual. The cross dominates churches, cemeteries, memorials.
The serpent slithers across logos, medicine, entertainment. These are not sacred icons. They are the visible interfaces of the machine. Resistance as fuel. Consider this paradox. The system does not fear your awakening. It requires it. An awakened soul generates more energy than a sleeping one. The struggle, the longing, the transcendence all vibrate more intensely than ignorance. This is why every spiritual movement eventually fuels the system. The counterculture of the 1960s, the New Age boom, the mindfulness industry, each began as rebellion, each was absorbed, each generated vast energy. Even your meditation is food. Your quest for enlightenment, your rituals of transcendence, your prayers for freedom, all are loops. The serpent feeds on them. The moon recycles them. Saturn counts them. The machine does not fear your escape. It thrives on your attempt. The American illusion of freedom. America prides itself on freedom. It is written into the Constitution, celebrated on the 4th of July, shouted in political campaigns. But what is freedom in a prison whose walls are invisible? You choose your job, but still work by the hour. You choose your house, but still live in a cube. You choose your partner, but still obey the serpent's whisper of desire. You choose your religion, but still circle the moon's cycle, bow to Saturn's time. The system allows variety because variety disguises captivity. What looks like choice is simply different corridors of the same prison. Machinery of reincarnation. At the heart of the machine lies the cycle of reincarnation. When you die, your energy is drawn toward the moon's field. It strips your memory, erases your identity, and recycles your soul. Saturn measures the process, ensuring karma is carried over, debts repaid. The serpent coils, ensuring desire pulls you back into a body. You are reborn, thinking you are making progress, but you are simply another round in the machine. Your past lives are not steps upward, but circles around. Each déjà vu, each strange dream, each echo of memory is the glitch of the recycling system, the faint trace of a path you have walked countless times before. This is why enlightenment feels close, yet elusive. This is why liberation seems possible, but never final. The machine ensures the wheel keeps spinning. The corporate machine. Think of corporations. They operate as smaller versions of the cosmic machine. Workers are recycled through positions, titles, careers. Time is measured by quarters, fiscal years, deadlines. Energy is extracted, labor, attention, consumption. Advertising plays the serpent, whispering hunger. Calendars and schedules play Saturn, enforcing time. The cycle of buying, using, discarding plays the moon, recycling consumer souls. The macrocosm reflected in the microcosm.
Humanity building replicas of its own prison, never realizing it is copying the cosmic design. Why you forget. The most insidious part of the machinery is forgetting. You do not remember your past lives. You forget your struggles, your deaths, your countless failures to escape. You return as if new, full of hope, full of hunger. This forgetting is not flaw, it is feature. It is how the moon wipes the slate, how Saturn ensures compliance, how the serpent fuels desire. If you remembered every cycle, you would stop playing. You would refuse the game. So memory is stripped, and the machine resets you. The Great Paradox. Here lies the greatest paradox of all. The way out is not resistance. Resistance fuels the machine. The way out is not worship. Worship feeds it. The way out is not transcendence. Transcendence becomes another cycle. The machine is total. Every move inside it strengthens it. So what is the way out? Perhaps it is not escape at all, but dissolution. Not breaking the laws, but realizing there was never a prisoner. The self that suffers, strives, awakens, and dies is part of the illusion. The moment you see that the seeker, the prison, and the search itself are the same illusion, the machine loses its grip. The American reckoning. For Americans, this truth cuts deep. We are taught to chase the dream, to seek success, to strive endlessly. Our culture is built on motion, faster, bigger, more. But what if this is the serpent's treadmill? What if the dream itself is the prison? We are taught to honor time, to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, retirements. But what if these are Saturn's chains? We are taught to adore the moon, to write songs, plant flags, celebrate eclipses. But what if this is consent to recycling? What if America, the land of freedom, is simply the most efficient expression of the machinery, a nation built on productivity, consumption, cycles, and desire? The machinery as mirror. Perhaps the machine is not out there at all. Perhaps it is inside. The moon is memory and forgetting in your own mind. Saturn is the limits you place on yourself. The serpent is the hunger in your heart. The cosmic prison is mirrored in the psyche. That is why no rebellion changes it. That is why no revolution escapes it, because the bars are inside. And so we see the full design. The moon recycles. Saturn imprisons. The serpent fuels. Together, they are the machinery of the prison. It is not mythology, it is architecture. It is not religion, it is operating system. It is not belief, it is function. You are not free. You are synchronized. You are not exploring. You are looping. You are not awakening. You are generating fuel. But knowledge is the first crack. Seeing the bars is the beginning of remembering they were never real.
In Part 5, we will ask the most dangerous question. If divine awakening fuels the system, is liberation possible at all? Or is every path, religion, rebellion, enlightenment just another corridor in the same machine? The promise of escape. Since the beginning of time, humanity has longed for freedom. From the chants of monks to the visions of prophets, from the peyote circles of native shamans to the meditation halls of Silicon Valley, the same dream echoes: awakening. Every culture, every age, every soul has sought it. We want to break the wheel. We want to escape the machine. We want to wake up. But what if awakening itself is part of the trap? What if every step toward liberation, every prayer, every ritual, every enlightenment experience only strengthens the machinery? This is the cruel paradox. The system does not fear your awakening. It feeds on it. The fire of seeking. To awaken is to seek, and seeking is motion. You meditate, you fast, you pray, you drink sacred brews, you chant mantras. Each act vibrates with energy. Each act is striving, yearning, longing. And that energy, no matter how sacred it feels, powers the machine. The serpent coils around your spine, rising through chakras, promising transcendence. The moon waits, ready to recycle your efforts into another life. Saturn measures every step, ensuring time and karma hold you accountable. Awakening feels like rebellion. In truth, it is participation. America's Great Awakenings. American history is a story of awakenings. The first Great Awakening in the 18th century filled churches with revival fire. The second ignited abolitionism and reform. The third and fourth echoed in social movements, counterculture, and New Age spirituality. Each was hailed as a revolution. Each promised a new birth of freedom. And yet, each ended in absorption. Institutions grew stronger. New denominations rose. Industries were created. Energy was generated. But true liberation? Always deferred, always promised, never delivered. Even the counterculture of the 1960s, with its psychedelic revolutions and cries for freedom, became fashion, music, commerce. The machine absorbed it. The serpent fed on it. Saturn measured its years. The moon recycled its profits. Awakening was not escape. It was fuel. The mindfulness industry. Look at modern America. Spirituality is a booming business. Yoga studios on every corner, meditation apps downloaded by millions, self-help books topping bestseller lists, retreats costing thousands of dollars. Mindfulness is marketed as liberation, but what is it really? Another cycle, another product, another subscription. You close your eyes to escape the world, but your practice is measured in minutes, tracked by apps, guided by corporate voices. Even your stillness is commodified. Even your silence is synchronized. The serpent smiles, Saturn counts, the moon waits. Psychedelics and the serpent. What about psychedelics? Surely they break the cycle. Surely they shatter the illusion. Americans embraced LSD, ayahuasca, psilocybin, seeking doorways beyond the prison. And yes, visions came. Yes, the veil lifted. Yes, many felt they touched eternity. But then they returned. The machine recycled the experience into memory. The serpent coiled tighter, whispering, "Seek again. Another trip, another ceremony, another dose." Even psychedelics become industry. Retreat centers, therapists, underground guides. A new economy of awakening. Another circuit in the system. You glimpse infinity, then you fall back. You rise, then descend. Each cycle generates energy. The machine feeds. The trap of teachers. Consider the gurus. America has imported teachers from every tradition, yogis, monks, mystics. Some are sincere, some corrupt. All become nodes in the same system. Disciples gather, communities form. Energy is directed, rituals are performed, money flows, desire grows. Some awaken, others despair, but all participate. Even rebellion against gurus fuels the machine. Even the disillusioned generate energy, anger, betrayal, longing for something purer. The serpent wins whether you bow or reject. The moon recycles whether you believe or mock. Saturn counts whether you join or leave. Awakening as entertainment. Modern America even consumes awakening as content. Podcasts on enlightenment, Netflix documentaries on gurus, YouTube channels about secret knowledge, spiritual TikToks promising ascension in 60 seconds. Awakening is not sacred. It is entertainment, another genre, another product, another distraction. The machine does not care whether you awaken authentically or shallowly. It only cares that you keep moving, that you keep seeking, that you keep generating energy. Why awakening feeds the machine? But why? Why would the system feed on awakening rather than fear it? Because awakened energy is potent. A soul in struggle generates more power than a soul asleep. The highs of ecstasy, the lows of despair, the cycles of hope and collapse, all vibrate at high intensity. The serpent feeds on intensity. The moon recycles it. Saturn ensures it counts. Ignorance is static. Awakening is dynamic, and dynamic energy fuels the gears. This is why the system allows awakening. It is not a crack in the prison. It is a feature. The paradox of liberation. Consider Buddhism. The Buddha taught liberation from suffering through the cessation of desire. Nirvana was not heaven, not reincarnation, but the extinguishing of the flame. But what happened after Buddha? His teachings became institutions, monasteries, rituals, hierarchies, karma codified, rebirth institutionalized. The cycle reabsorbed his flame. Consider Christianity. Jesus taught freedom from sin, a kingdom not of this world. But what happened? Churches, cathedrals, rituals, dogmas, crucifixion as symbol of suffering repeated endlessly. The cube of Saturn rebuilt in stone. Consider Hinduism. Mystics spoke of moksha, freedom from the wheel, yet billions still circle temples, chant mantras, light candles to lunar cycles. The serpent coils tighter. Awakening always begins as rebellion. It always ends as system. The American dream of transcendence. Even the American dream is a kind of awakening myth. Work hard, rise up, transcend poverty, achieve prosperity. Each generation climbs higher. But what is the result? Debt, burnout, consumerism, cycles of boom and bust. The dream itself is a treadmill. Progress is measured in dollars and decades. Saturn's language. Desire fuels the chase. The moon recycles the players. The dream is not escape. It is domesticated awakening, striving, packaged as destiny. The trap of resistance. Some realize this and resist. They drop out, reject religion, deny the system, proclaim themselves free. But resistance is still energy. Anger fuels the machine as much as worship. Cynicism generates vibration as much as faith. Even apathy recycles into another life. The system is airtight. Every move inside it powers it. This is the despair of many mystics. They see the bars and realize rebellion is part of the design. The more they struggle, the tighter the serpent coils. The fear of nothingness. Why then do we not stop? Why not cease all motion? Because of fear, the fear of nothingness. The serpent whispers, better suffering than the void, better cycles than silence, better prison than dissolution. And so we cling to awakening as we cling to desire. We seek not because it frees us, but because the alternative, emptiness, terrifies us. The serpent ensures this fear never fades. Awakening or another corridor? So what is awakening then? It is another corridor in the prison, another ritual, another loop. You may feel freer, higher, lighter, but you are still within the geometry of Saturn, the cycles of the moon, the currents of the serpent. Awakening is not escape. It is adaptation. It is learning to live in the cage with more awareness, more energy, more participation. The system loves awakened souls. They generate more fuel than sleepers. The machine of enlightenment. Look at modern spirituality. Workshops promising ascension, retreats offering Kundalini awakenings, books on manifestation and law of attraction. All sell liberation. All deliver cycles. Manifestation is the serpent in pure form. Desire structured into ritual. Law of attraction is Saturn's ledger disguised as freedom. Kundalini is the moon's recycling current disguised as transcendence. Even enlightenment becomes industry. Even freedom becomes product. The machine absorbs all. The hidden door. But is there no way out? Is the system total, unbreakable, eternal? Some traditions whispered of another path. The Gnostics taught that salvation was not worship, but awakening to the false god, the demiurge. Not seeking heaven, but recognizing this world as prison. The Buddhists spoke of nirvana as cessation. Not another cycle, not another world, but extinguishing. Hermetic schools taught that true initiation was unlearning, stripping away every illusion until nothing remained. These paths did not promise bliss. They promised dissolution, the recognition that the seeker, the prison, and the search were all illusions. The cruelest truth. Here is the cruelest truth. Awakening as you know it is another trap. Every ritual, every prayer, every psychedelic, every meditation, every teacher, every rebellion, all loops, all fuel. The only way out is not a path, not a practice, not a religion, not a rebellion. It is the recognition that there was never a prisoner. The self that strives, suffers, and awakens is part of the illusion. Dissolve that, and the machine starves. America's choice. For America, this truth is a test. A nation built on striving, progress, and dreams must face the possibility that all of it is motion inside the serpent's coil. That freedom itself, as we define it, is another corridor in the prison. Will we keep seeking, fueling, striving? Or will we dare to face the terrifying possibility that awakening is not progress, but dissolution? Awakening feels like rebellion. In truth, it is participation. It feels like freedom. In truth, it is fuel. It feels like the way out. In truth, it is another trap. The moon recycles. Saturn imprisons. The serpent fuels. Awakening intensifies all three. But in the paradox of awakening lies a secret. If awakening is another trap, then the only way out is not awakening at all, but something beyond it. Not resistance, not rebellion, not transcendence, but recognition. In Part 6, we will face the final gate. We will ask the most dangerous question of all. If the prison itself is illusion, then who is the prisoner? And if there is no prisoner, then what has been bound all along? The last question. The moon recycles. Saturn imprisons. The serpent fuels. Together, they form the architecture of the prison. We have traced the cycles, mapped the symbols, exposed the machinery. And yet one question remains, the most dangerous of all. If the system is so total, so airtight, so all-consuming, is there any way out? Every religion promises salvation. Every philosophy offers escape. Every spiritual practice whispers freedom. But we have seen the truth. Awakening itself can become another corridor, another loop, another trap. So what remains? What is the only way out? The search for escape. For centuries, seekers have pursued the path of liberation. The mystics of India spoke of moksha, release from samsara. The Buddhists named nirvana, the extinguishing of the flame of craving. The Gnostics warned of the demiurge and sought gnosis, knowledge of the false god's prison. The Sufis spun in ecstasy to dissolve the self. Christian hermits retreated to deserts, hoping to strip away the world. But the paradox remained. Every path became institution. Every rebellion became ritual. Every liberation became doctrine. The serpent coiled around seekers as tightly as around the ignorant. And so the question sharpened. If even liberation is recycled, what is left? The machinery's weakness. The machine is powerful, but it has a flaw. It depends on the existence of a prisoner. It requires a self, a soul, an ego, an identity to recycle, to measure, to hunger. Without that, the gears have nothing to process. The moon cannot recycle what has no memory. Saturn cannot measure what has no boundaries. The serpent cannot coil around what does not move. The machinery thrives on the assumption that you are someone moving through time, someone seeking, someone to be saved. But what if that assumption is false? The prisoner who wasn't there. Mystics across traditions whispered the same terrifying realization. The prisoner does not exist. The self you cling to, the I that is born, suffers, seeks, and dies, is an illusion, a mask, a mirage, a story told inside the prison. Strip it away, and what remains? Not nothingness, but awareness itself. Silent, infinite, unbound. The prison was never real because the prisoner was never real. The terror of dissolution. This is the final gate, the one most fear. To reach it, you must face the terror of dissolution. Not liberation into bliss, not eternal reward, not reincarnation into higher realms, but the end of the self, the end of the seeker, the end of you. The serpent whispers, better suffering than the void, better prison than silence, better cycles than dissolution. And so most turn back. They cling to cycles. They choose prison over emptiness. But for those who dare, for those who let the self dissolve, the machinery collapses. America and the fear of death. Our culture idolizes individuality. We are taught from birth to assert ourselves, to build identities, to brand our lives, to leave a legacy. The American dream itself is the story of the self triumphing against odds. But what if the self is the cage? What if the dream is the lock? We fear death because we fear the loss of self. We build industries to deny aging. We create myths of heaven to preserve identity. We cling to reincarnation to continue the story. But the only way out is not continuation. It is dissolution. The silence beyond. Mystics called it many names. The cloud of unknowing, the great void, the still point, the silence beyond sound. It is not heaven, it is not hell, it is not reincarnation. It is the recognition that the world of cycles was dreamt, and the dreamer was empty. Awareness without self, being without story, infinity without identity. This is not annihilation, it is freedom. The prison dissolves. When this recognition dawns, the machinery loses power. The moon may shine, but it no longer recycles you. Saturn may turn, but it no longer measures you. The serpent may coil, but it no longer fuels you. Because there is nothing to recycle, nothing to measure, nothing to coil around. The prison dissolves not because it is broken, but because it was never real. The paradox of freedom. Here lies the ultimate paradox. You cannot escape the prison, but you can recognize there was never a prisoner. You cannot destroy the machinery, but you can see it was illusion. You cannot transcend cycles, but you can realize cycles never bound you. Freedom is not another place, not another life, not another path. It is the recognition that what you truly are was never touched by the moon, never bound by Saturn, never moved by the serpent. Awareness itself is free, always was, always will be. The end of seeking. When this is seen, seeking ends. No more striving for enlightenment. No more rituals of escape. No more rebellions that feed the system. The serpent loses its coil. The moon loses its contract. Saturn loses its authority. And life continues. The moon still rises. Saturn still turns. The serpent still slithers. But their grip is gone. They are scenery, not jailers. The seeker has died. Awareness remains. America's awakening. What does this mean for America? A nation built on striving may face its greatest test, to let go of striving itself, to see that freedom is not something earned, fought for, legislated, or consumed. Freedom is what you already are. The American dream collapses at this realization. For if the self is illusion, then the dreamer is illusion. And yet, beyond the collapse lies true liberty, not political, not economic, but existential. This is the revolution no flag can capture, no constitution can enshrine. The final gate. So here we stand at the final gate. Behind us, the moon, Saturn, and the serpent, their machinery humming, recycling souls, binding time, fueling motion. Before us, silence, emptiness, dissolution. The serpent hisses, "Don't go, better suffering than nothingness." Saturn warns, "Without me, there is no order, no story." The moon whispers, "Without me, you forget everything. You lose yourself." And they are right. You will lose yourself. That is the point. Step through and the machinery starves. Step through and the bars dissolve. Step through and you see the secret hidden in plain sight. The prison was never outside. It was always inside the belief that you were someone to be trapped. Let that belief die, and freedom is immediate. The return to the world. And then, paradox again. You return. You walk, breathe, eat, live. You work jobs, pay bills, laugh with friends, cry with family. The moon still glows, Saturn still turns, the serpent still whispers. But now you know, they cannot bind what does not exist. Life becomes play, cycles become patterns of art, time becomes a stage, desire becomes music, the machinery becomes theater. And you, no longer prisoner, are the silent witness, the awareness in which it all arises and dissolves. Closing of the cycle. This is the only way out. Not escape, not rebellion, not transcendence. Recognition. The moon will shine, Saturn will hum, the serpent will coil. But their grip is gone, for how can they imprison what was never bound? This is the secret hidden in plain sight. This is the truth whispered by mystics, encoded in myths, concealed in symbols. The prison was never real. The prisoner was never there. And when you see this clearly, everything changes. Not because the world is different, but because you are no longer trapped in the dream of being someone inside it. You are awareness itself, silent, infinite, free.